The food we eat, the words we speak, and the faith we believe all boils down to our culture. How we act today is rooted in the rich history of our society. With the culture, traditions, and community of the Philippines, everyone has had their share in developing the uniqueness and distinctness of the country. We all know about the term Pinoy pride. Whenever someone represents the colors of the Philippines in any international fight, we Filipinos are prepared to give our undying and unwavering support. So the question is, how did Rizal's ancestry and nationalism change society during the Spanish rule? Whoever is the more dominant and prominent in a society gets to lead and make changes to their liking. As with the Chinese immigrants assimilating into the Spanish culture, the Spanish had the upper hand as they had the power and the authority to enforce changes. The Chinese had no other choice but to abide by the Spaniards and intermarry with the Indios. However, the Chinese still had their own identity. The assimilation and intermarriages do not entirely mean that the Chinese became Spaniards or Indios, but instead give rise to the combination or a compromise of the different clashing cultures. Eventually, the intermarriages led to the social class of the mestizos. New cultures or social structures can come from the combination or the development of an already existing culture, such as with the case of the rise of the mestizo social class. A known individual of this social class is no other than Jose Rizal. Rizal's Chinese ancestry itself did not cause changes to the Philippine history, but instead allowed opportunities for the changes to happen. The mestizos had the Indios drive to overthrow the Spaniards, while having the privileges of the Chinese that allowed for lesser restrictions. Rizal made use of these privileges so that he can act out the Indios' desire for independence from its Spanish captors. These elements allowed for Rizal to be able to express his nationalism for the then incoming challenges. Society can also change not because of who rules over it and what makes up of it, but also the underlying circumstances that the society faces. Same with how the treatment of the Chinese by the Spaniards made changes to the Chinese community. Indios received abuse and unfair treatment with regards to ownership of lands. Anyone involved in religious orders such as the friars would definitely receive some benefits for their services and loyalty to the Spaniards' faith. The Spaniards, incapable of making use of the abundant lands, gave such resources to the friars. It would be expected for a small group to abuse such control over lands as a way of either gaining from their services or just because they receive what seems to be power and authority. Rizal's family was a victim of such abuse and unfair treatment. This was no longer a business between the friars and the Rizals, but instead outright abuse. Moreover, the friars made sure that these landowners remained ignorant and uneducated so that they are blind to the friars' corruption. Society does not shape its individual as a whole, but creates different groups of individuals within it. These different groups of individuals within it act together into the situations that arise from it. An individual exposed to an environment of inequality would either remain abused due to their inability to fight for justice when the need arises. Their choice depends on the opportunities and outcomes that they are faced with. Rizal was exposed and grew to an environment of inequality wherein he and his fellow men received the short end of the stick. Rizal did not let this abuse and inequality to persist since he had the capability to fight against the Spanish oppressors, or at least ignite the fuel of what can be the start of it. Rizal's Chinese ancestry, though he did not want to be affiliated with this, granted him privileges that would help him in this battle. The unfair treatment of lands that the Rizal's family experienced pushed Rizal to expose the corruption of the priors and subsequently overthrow the ruling Spaniards. Societal issues then would still remain relevant today. Despite the great change the Rizal caused, the problems back then still continue to exist until now. Today, society continues to face inequalities that restrict groups of individuals from their justice. Corruption is still evident and rampant. Thus, the poor becomes poorer and the rich become richer. Similar to how Rizal faced these problems back then, individuals should strive to remain aware of the society around themselves and uphold a love for their fellow men.